about African languages, generally, in particular our own languages. And I feel ashamed when you have a gathering of this nature talking about our languages. And I think everybody should feel ashamed also. There are many questions that we should be asking ourselves. I think it is because we don't ask ourselves questions. That's why some of the things are happening as they are happening. And we should cease to do that. We must ask fundamental questions. We are virtually 60 years old since we earned so-called independence. And now here we are sitting down in this classroom, we are questioning whether or not we should talk about our language, we should learn our languages. That's a shame. And when the whole world meets, the only continent that speaks in a foreign language is Africa. All other continents speak in their own languages. That's also a shame. And nobody asks a question about that. Multilingualism is not peculiar to Africa. They have mentioned it. It is a general phenomenon, worldwide. But if you don't take the right measures, it dies. And that is what has happened to Europe. There isn't only English in England. So, how do we go and become equal to others in the world when we are using what is best known to them? We are using tools which belong to them, which they master and which we don't master. And for those, that's exactly the essence of colonialism, to keep you down in order for them to prevail over you. And we, after independence, so-called independence, that is the chain that we should have broken. And once that chain is broken, we would have been better than that. That is why South Korea is better than Ghana, even though Ghana is richer than South Korea. They all became independent almost the same year. South Korea is now part of the so-called first world. Ghana is still tottering in the so-called third world with all her riches. Because they are operating in a language which is alien to them. Can you imagine how many Gambians use language here? 80% of our population don't speak English, and they are the active producers of wealth in this country. Everything that we are doing, we say we are doing on their behalf. They don't participate. They are ignorant of everything that we are doing. And they should have been part and parcel of the conception of everything that we are doing in their name. We just sit in these schoolhouses and then we think, you plan something. Planning something for somebody you don't know, how he or she is living, how he or she is being confronted by life difficulties, you don't know. And you sit down, you are saying you are planning for, you don't even know the environment in which that person is living. And you say you are planning for him or her. That is hypocrisy, that's deception. So, unless we change our life fundamentally, and to changing our life means we must begin to use our languages, because these are our fundamental tools for expressing ourselves the best way we want, the best way we know about nature and society. How many philosophers are lying out everywhere in the Gambia? How many of them? How many of them are we killing? How many of them are we denying the joy of taking a pen and writing something in your own language? There are thousands and one people who can write philosophies, essays, scientific works in these languages. Do you know why bourgeois intellectual Europe was angry with Saint-John when he wrote his thesis in 1954? Because what he wrote was exposing the anomaly and the historical fallacy of Africa about African languages. It took him more than a day to defend his doctoral thesis. Because then the bourgeois intellectuals in Europe would not accept what he was writing. And that was the fact, unshakable fact. But when we started here, they say, what can you do in mathematics? What can you do with French? How can you do mathematics in Wolof? How can you do mathematics in... Can you imagine this nonsense? And that is what drove, say, Ante Job to translate Einstein's theory of relativity, that is scientific, into Wolof. So it is not that our languages are poor. It is we who have been rendered poor, incapable of using our languages the way we should use them. The languages are rich. Rich. Sometimes even richer than those that they think are richer than them. And that's why he said when he was translating that scientific work, sometimes he would find 4 Wolof words for 1 French word. 4 different Wolof words for 1 scientific French word. And may I tell you, all the scientific words in French and English are not French. They are borrowed. They are either Latin or Greek. You don't know that? Philosophy is Greek. Psychology is Greek. The others are Latin. And why do they say that there are too many languages here, therefore we can have... How many official languages are there in Switzerland? 3. In fact, 4. In the 70s, mid-70s, when I was in Grenoble, my professor conducted a study in Hungary. He discovered there were 14 official languages in Hungary. It is not impossible. In fact, we have a wealth of languages in Africa we can use regionally. If you take Fulde, for example, Fular, what we call Pular, it is spoken in every country in West Africa, in one form or the other, and the last one in Central Africa. So what is wrong with us using Fulfulde as a language regionally? When we accept to speak French, we accept to speak Spanish, we accept to speak Arabic, we say all these languages, which are alien to us. If I am happy, look at me, I speak French, I speak English. And then when somebody tells me, like, I'm a Wolof, I'm not a Wolof. What nonsense. And you are speaking English. I'm Wolof because I'm born with Wolof in the same environment. We are one. The only thing different is nomenclature. Mandinka, Wolof, same people, same culture. It is easier for me to learn Wolof than to learn French because Wolof is part of me and part of my culture. But if you say now, okay, Gambia, we are going to, let's say, we are West Africa, we agree now, we say we are going to fulfill the regional language. They will take their guns and fight and kill people because of that. But they are not killing anybody for speaking French or even Arabic or even Spanish or Portuguese. Can you imagine how we Africans, how they have succeeded to warp and pervert our minds to a point that we cannot even use our mind for our own good. We are always working for the others. The minds are always operating to promote others' wealth, others' good, and trample afoot our own. This is what's happening here. So the new language policy he was talking about, and in fact he said something, he is very polite, but me, I'm not going to be polite. I will push it to its logical conclusion. He said, there is a reason why we are still clinging to English, even after independence. Do you know the reason why? Because English makes you look better than the person who does not speak English. English makes you up there, and the person, even though you are working for that person, you are looking downcast. He is the one who is paying your salaries and your fat allowances because he or she does not speak English, so you are there. An employee and the employer is trampled afoot because he or she does not speak English. That is what is happening here. Stop. And therefore, they are afraid that if this new language is this, I call it new language, but they are not new, they are old. But because we are now beginning to see that they should be written, they can be written, these new languages, if you learn how to read and write, everybody does, then they lose their positions. A permanent secretary will no longer be English speaking. It can be a Wolof speaker, it can be a Mandinka speaker, it can be a Sahule speaker, it can be anybody. And that is the joy. Billah will flourish. That is what we should do. I promise you, the day we start using these languages to write, do you know, when I sit down in my house, I cry. Literally, I cry every day in my... When I think, I say, particularly when I look at this television, I look at all the televisions, Guinea, Gambia, Mali, Senegal, everybody, wherever, Ghana. And then I see these people well, beautifully dressed. Some of them painted. And they start speaking, you laugh, speaking English, speaking French in a very beautiful way. I look at this, I think, why I'm sick? Who are they speaking to? Tell me, if you speak English on radio, on TV, JGRTS or QTV, who are you speaking to in English? Tell me. Only an infinitesimal fraction of the population. The vast majority, and what is more annoying, when they give national news, they give it first in English. Where is the English person who is going to listen to that? You would have expected it to be given in Wolof or Mandinka or any other Gambian language. But they are always not immediately, in fact, they do that, and then later they give the news. This is a tragedy. That is the tragedy. Honestly, if you go back home, please sit down and think about everything that's happening here today. You will hate yourself. You will hate yourself for having been part of a process which has been enslaving everybody here. Nobody gets angry about all these things. I think I'm the only one. Mr. Jeng also is part. The other day I saw him in one of the, he cried. He cried in a hall, this very hall. He was talking, he cried. I used to do that. He used to calm down. I saw him cry. You have now got the disease yourself. You have also been infected now. He cries. Because he was thinking the same way I was thinking and was crying. And he left, when he was up to that corner, somebody came and I laughed. I said, now, you thought I was mad, but I'm not. Now you are also infected. And all of you should be infected. Honestly speaking, we have been a terrible damage to our people. A terrible damage. And the funny thing is, the English they are promoting, they are always failing it. It's always the casualty in all the examinations. English language is always the first dead person in the examination. And now, they think that they can use the child's language not for the child to learn that, to become cognitively grounded, but to use that as a tool to better the child's skill in reading English. Can you imagine this? This is the whole method. And for me, I have never supported it, and I will never support it because it is to the detriment of the child. The child should be grounded in the L1 first, and that's the foundation. The child's language is the foundation. Once the child has that, he or she can learn any language with no problem. I say it because I started learning my language. Me, God likes me very much. I went to school at the height of colonialism in the Gambia. And the colonialists established 3 schools for teaching the mother tongue. They call it the mother tongue. And I happened to be one of the candidates. For 2 years, I learned in my own language. And 2 years, I left school. But 2 years, after 2 years, I came back. I was better than those who were continuing their education because I was grounded cognitively. I'm telling you that. What I could write in those days, in standard 3, wallahi, grade 12 students can't write it. They can't. Because they are not grounded. And that's why you still have at the university. Doctor is there. Ask them to write French for your French students, or to write English for you, you know what problem you will have. So the problem now is they have said everything. I'm just saying this thing to motivate you, to inspire you, to understand that for the last 60 years we have been doing nothing other than committing crime against ourselves. Serious crime against ourselves. We have been denying ourselves the joy to learn with ease. All of you would have been something totally different if you were learning. From 60 years ago, you were learning your languages. Go to Somalia. Everything is written in Somali since mid-70s. From preschool to university, they learn in nothing other than Somali. They are lucky because 98% of the population, like Wolof in Senegal, 98% of the world population speaks Somali. There are over 100 languages in Somalia. But Somali is the most important language, demographically or linguistically. So to choose it as a national language was very easy. But we can also do it. You can't force a language on people. No one ever does that. India wanted to do it in 1948 when Nehru was their president. They put it in their constitution that Hindi was going to be the national language. It nearly boiled down to a national crisis. They had to change it. Because demographically, maybe Hindis are not more than the Gujaratis in India. It's like Amharic in Ethiopia. The Amharas are not more than the Oromos. They are not more than the Tigrinyas. Demographically, these two are bigger than Amharas. But, like she said in her presentation, language also has its own force that makes it prevail over other languages. Because Amharic has been connected with the ruling class from all those who have done the history of Africa. All the Meneliks, all the kings in Ethiopia are all Amharas. So Amharic was connected with the ruling class. And it was also the language of the Coptic church in Ethiopia. So these two powerful weapons made it to go up. But new situation has emerged. A linguistic nationalism has emerged. Oromos came up. Tigrinyas came up. They have their own television station. They teach their children in their own language. And Tigrinyas likewise. So it is not impossible for there to be 3 or more languages in a country. It is not impossible. It is already happening. That is what's happening in Switzerland. You have never heard of a war in Switzerland. They are having 3. And one of them is even they call Romance. That's a dead language, but it's also their so-called official language. What about 14 official languages in Hungary? So, forget about this question of official or what. What's important? That's why UNESCO made a declaration in 1952 that it is the right of every child in the world to begin learning in the mother, they call it mother tongue. But I'll tell you the difference. Mr. Jay told, but I'll make it even much clearer. There is a difference between L1 and mother tongue. Because if you say mother tongue, a person like me, I will suffer. My mother was full of speaking. She married into an overwhelmingly Mandinka community. So she never spoke Fula to me. She spoke to me in Mandinka. So my mother's language is Fula. That's my mother tongue. But she never spoke that. When I learned to speak the Fula, since I've never seen any of my grandparents, I used her, my grandmother. When I wanted to be funny with her, I spoke to her in Fula. And I was the only child of hers who was doing that. She never forgot Fula language. She spoke it throughout, up to her death. But my mother tongue was Mandinka. Mandinka is my father tongue. But there are kids whose father's language, the mother's language, they don't speak. The linguistic environment, which is dominantly a particular language, is the language they speak. I taught in Kampama School. You know, Tobacco Road is very close to Kampama School. The kids in Kambama school, most of them are Mandinka. But they speak Wolof. So he showed you a language map. Everybody would think that in Fonyi, the dominant language is Jola. No, if you go to Majorque, the dominant language there is, the language which is popularly known there is Fula. So you see the situation. That's why we prefer to...
Another example, my grandchild, the grandmom is Mandinka. The grandfather is Jola, meaning the father is Jola, the mom is Wolof, the grandmom is Mandinka. The child is 1.5 years old, can speak unprompted, very complex Wolof. I on a daily basis, and I challenge especially the students at the university, those who are interested in linguistics. Just map out your environment and observe these kids. The kind of language they use, the structure of the language, the complexity of the language in L1 that they are using unprompted, you will be amazed that if a child is struggling just constructing simple sentence in L2 and they are struggling with that. It is not about the cognitive ability of the child. It's just to tell you that we have a problem and we have to address it as a problem.
Yes, the children are very free psychologically. They don't have problem with any language. That's why they can learn any language without any. If you take them to China, they'll speak Chinese. They have no problem. We adults, we are already tinted with how would I call it again, with a lot of discrepancies. If you go to Mali, like if you go to Dakar, if you can't speak Wolof, then nobody will speak, or maybe you speak French. Huh? But that situation also is changing in Senegal, huh? Because the Fulas have now emerged and they are promoting their language. And the Fulas, the whole West Africa Fulas have created a big community. Every year they have a cultural festival in a particular place. They have their own television station. They have their own platform. In fact, the person managing the Fula platform TV is paid over $3,000. Yes. So it is serious. So eventually, all these languages will not die because the people who are speaking them are there and they have become linguistically conscious and want to maintain and speak their language because they know that is what is good for them. There is nothing wrong with multilingualism. But there can never be any multilingualism if people ignore their languages. And that is what has happened in most of Europe. England, they have only English. It is not, historically, they have hundreds of languages. France, they have, even now, the fortunate ones are now received. There are 2 in southern France, because I spent my first year in France, university in France, Montpellier University. I was there for 1 year. Yes, madam. Yes.
Excuse me, just I want to witness something. Ngeen baal ma bëgguma tagg honorable Sidia Jatta, but dama leen bëgg just mu commencé jàng linguistique si lay doog a judd in 1982.
So, okay, to finish up, because there will be more forums where this matters. We will have to start a war. No, there has to be a new revolution in Africa. Not a revolution with arms, revolution with abstract arms, revolution with ideas. That is what we must wage to free ourselves, to be able to move forward. It is very necessary. So I thank you very much. Maybe people will have questions to answer, ask. But essentially, these 3 people have already told you what you needed to tell you. I'm just trying to inspire you. for us to be able to move forward. Thank you very much.